the earth that is sufficient. I do not want the constellations any nearer. I know they are very well where they are. I know they suffice for those who belong to them. My friends, this is Samir Khasnis from Shri T.P. Bhatia College of Science, Kandivali, and I'm recited the poem Song of the Open Road by Walt Whitman. This was the third stanza. In this third stanza, the poet Walt Whitman makes a reference, or rather I'll say comparative study between earth and stars. He says that earth is enough for him, and obviously it is a universal truth. Earth is sufficient for every one of us. And he does not desire to be any closer to the constellation. He also knows that it is the free will and determination and independence makes us strong. I thought one more thing, a subtle comparative thing, that constellation here also means influential people. According to the poet, he says that if you have influential people around, the one who could inspire you, when you have influential people, when you have constellations, there are two types of stars in figurative language, you can say, one from the galaxy and one among us, those who inspire us, because that's why we call them as stars, that's why they are so influential. And today, on the same note, I'm going to speak about West Indies cricket. And West Indies cricket is full of such influential people, constellation of stars. From 1976 especially till 1995, West Indies cricket was the powerhouse of the game. In between this 76 to 95, they played 137 test matches, winning 71 test matches, and they lost only 18. For consecutive 27 tests, they did not lose a single test match, and not a series for 15 years of 1980 to 95. And why? Because it was the same way. Constellation, stars. As I spoke about 3 W's, and we spoke in length about Sir Frank Worrell, so I'm going to tell you another influential person from 3 W's, that is the second of W, Sir Clive Walcott. Very powerful Bajan. Bajan is a term we use for a person from Barbados, a Barbadian known for hardest hitting batsmen of all 3 W's. All these 3 W's, that is Sir Frank Worrell, Sir Clive Walcott and Sir Everton Wicks, were born within a square mile of the Kingston Oval cricket ground, which is in Barbados. And surprisingly, all these 3 babies were delivered by the same midwife, yani Dai. Sir Frank Worrell, Sir Clive Walcott or Sir Everton Wicks की दाई एक ही थी. This is, I suppose, something which makes us a more subliminal feeling about them. Sir Clive Walcott's batting style was all power. Any ball which is over-pitched will disappear through the covers. He was extremely good in back foot. Excellent wicketkeeper. There is a calypso song by Lord Brigner on 1960 match as well on these 3 W's. Sir Clive Walcott also served the game of cricket as a coach and a team manager. And under his tutelage, he brought 2 great players of West Indies from Guyana especially, that is Clive Lloyd and Rohan Kanhai, in the array of cricket. The third W is prolific Sir Everton Wicks. In 2020, at the ripe age of 95, we lost him. But Sir Everton Wicks is remembered in every spirit of cricket, in every spirit and every sphere. It was Sir Don Bradman, in his book called Bradman's Best, considers Sir Everton Wicks as the finest West Indian batsman we ever saw. This is coming from Sir Don Bradman. Sir Everton Wicks was born in a very poor family, and he was unable to afford to go and play with some clubs, so he will play in a back alley, that the way what many Indian kids do. And as of, he cannot hit the ball as a skier because it will go into someone's house They will shout, they will scold, they will hit him. So he was used to hit the ball through the ground, which made him so unique that Sir Everton Wicks was known as hitting across the line through the driving the ball through the ground. In this influential people of West Indies, I am going to name one more, that is Sony Ramadeen. If you remember, in my previous video I spoke about Ram and Bell. This Ram refers to Sony Ramadeen, a small fella, 5'4", and he will always bowl with his maroon cap on. He paved a way for spinning tradition in West Indies. One more thing I want to make a note here, especially for India, is that Sony Ramadeen is of Indian origin, and he paved the way, gave impetus to a lot of people from Indian origin to take cricket. And there was one who was inspired by Sony Ramadeen as an Indian boy to take up the cricket, and that was Rohan Babulal Kanhai, one of the greatest batsmen to play the game of cricket. Famous for his sweep shot. You know how he will he'll play the sweep shot. He will go on his toes and he will hit the ball. It was like a combination between sweep and hook shot. And many a times he will be grounded, he will fall down. And that was the reason why n number of sports news reporters would name him as a triumphant fall, because whenever he will hit the ball will go across the line as on a horizontal shot, but he will also fall down. And this is Rohan Kanhai. It is a story we don't know. I especially don't know whether it is true or not, but there are lot many stories about him, as in Guyana, lot many Hindu boys, those who are from Indian origin, would actually place his photograph and sprinkle holy water and do puja, considering him as a divine figure, and which is actually because Sunil Gavaskar even gave his son the name Rohan because tribute to Rohan Kanhai. You won't believe it, Rohan Kanhai was instrumental in making Sunil Gavaskar what we know today as the great Sunil Gavaskar, because on his first tour to West Indies, Sunil Gavaskar, he says that while crossing the pitch, which the wicketkeeper and the slip cordon will do from one end to another, whenever Rohan Kanhai will move closer to Sunil Gavaskar, he will whisper in his ears that, "Hey guy, don't you want to make a big score? Then make a big 100. He will always do. It is something very weird and unique to see that the opponent player is inspiring the other player. This is the spirit of cricket, and this is what Rohan Kanhai stands for. There is one more Indian origin player called Alvin Kalicharan. And the moment we think about Alvin Kalicharan is known for one thing. Though he came to India as a captain during the Caripaka series, when the best of the West Indian players were not available, it was Kalicharan who was made as a captain. But Alvin Kalicharan was known as a pocket dynamite. And one thing which is available on YouTube, which I want all my friends and students to watch, about a league match of 1975 World Cup, which was called as a Prudential Cup, when Alvin Kalicharan, shirt unbuttoned, bareheaded, is batting on an overcast day to face the great Dennis Lillee. And what followed was a Mexican standoff of 10-ball assault. Kalicharan cracked 35 runs to great Dennis Lillee with 7 boundaries, 1 single, 1 duck and a huge 6. And it is all available on YouTube. I want you all to check out, and you will realize the potential of Alvin Kalicharan. Unfortunately, he went for a rebel tour to South Africa during apartheid, and from then on nobody speaks about Kalicharan, but we have to give him due credit because he was a fabulous left-hander. When I talk about left-hander, but obviously the name which comes to my mind and to everyone is Sir Garfield Sobers, Gary Sobers, greatest all-rounder from Bridgetown, Barbados, who was 6 years old when he lost his father. coming from a very poor family. Then too, he made into West Indian cricket, and at the age of 21, his maiden test century against Pakistan was 365 runs. Could you imagine? The maiden test century Sir Gary Sobers made was 365 not out in 1958 when he was just 21 years old. Sir Gary Sobers, he can bowl fast, he can bowl sim, he can bowl as a spinner, he could be as a wicketkeeper, he was excellent in slip cordon, he was excellent in closing, he was excellent on the boundary line, he could bat as an opener, he could be on any place you belong to. It is a story, I don't know whether it is true or false, but it is said that he even was an umpire for 1 over because the umpire Dickie Bird, the great Dickie Bird, was not keeping up well and he wanted to attend a nature's call, so he went to the dressing room. Obviously there was a time when we don't had that lot many umpires like these days, so it was Sir Gary who was called to be the umpire of that particular over, and he did that. Gary Sobers in 93 test matches made 8,000 plus runs, took 232 wickets, 109 catches including stumping, and 26 centuries. If you remember, one of that is 132 in that tie match. This is Sir Gary Sobers. He even had penned down science fiction stories, which is unique for all teachers especially. And Gary went across the line to help even the opponents. Ian Chappell, the great Ian Chappell of Australia, he even today speaks about Gary Sobers, that it was he who helped him to bat and control his backlift, which is unique. In his autobiography, Sir Gary Sobers says that he played for 2 people. Yes, for 2 people. Surprise? Let me tell you. While he was a young guy, he was a reckless fellow. And while driving a car, he met with a terrible accident. Fortunately, there was not even a scratch to Gary Sobers, but his friend who was sitting beside him, a close friend and a promising young cricketer called Morgan Smith, died on the spot. Gary was so sad that he gave up playing cricket. But later, in his introspection, he realized that it was he who was responsible to have one of the promising young player, Morgan Smith, who lost his life. So now it was his responsibility to play for himself, but also for Morgan Smith. And so he took up a job to play for 2 men, one for himself and one for Morgan Smith. And that is the reason why he played so great. And this is all into his autobiography. While Gary was the captain, there was the issue of discipline. People say that he was not that good in discipline, and so West Indies was not doing good. But Gary Sobers had a young player in his team who was made captain, and that was Sir Clive Lloyd. I'm going to speak about Sir Clive Lloyd, the captain who made the West Indian team the dominant force under his leadership. He brought new methods. It was he who introduced with a physio in the team. Along with that, discipline and team spirit was his forte. It was a time when West Indian, as I said, was of 10 islands. So the room partners will be always from the same island. And it was the reason why there was a kind of disparity. But it was Clive Lloyd who made a new way that 2 different people from different islands would stay together, and that made a big impact on him. He was not only a captain, but he was a captain who could lead from the front. In 1975 World Cup, which was known to be the Prudential Cup, the finals against Australia, Clive Lloyd, when he was injured, then too, he came back and made a fabulous 102 runs of 85 balls with 12 boundaries and 2 huge sixes to make West Indies the first winners of 1975 Prudential Cup. And you won't believe it, when Clive Lloyd came to bat, it was 50 for 3, so that the condition was very bad, but he played. Alvin Kalachari is When I talk about West Indian team, obviously you cannot ignore the contribution of great opening pair Gordon Greenidge and Desmond Haynes. Gordon Greenidge is the only person who is known to be retired not out. Normally you find retired hurt. When a player is injured, he will retire, and that is called as retired hurt. But it is only Gordon Greenidge in the history of cricket who got a tag called retired not out. I'll tell you why. It was in Antigua, India versus West Indies. His daughter was not well, was hospitalized. But then too, the great Gordon Greenidge made cracking 154 against India. At the end, he was informed that his daughter is not well and she has to be operated. And so he left, and then it was called retired not out. Gordon Greenidge and Desmond Haynes gave extremely great openings throughout these 15 years of their career, and because of their great opening, the team could make big scores. Same way, even Larry Gomes was a big contributor in West Indian side. This particular team was all of great people. I spoke about batsmen. Now let us tell you something about the great bowlers of West Indies. Though I spoke about spinners Sonny Ramadeen and Lance Gibbs, but today when you see the history books, you will find West Indies is known for fast bowling. And the moment we think about fast bowling, we have discussed about Wesley Hall and Charlie Griffith in 1960. But now, after the retirement of these two, Charlie Griffith and Wesley Hall, the new firepower was headed by Andy Roberts, one of the greatest fast bowlers in the history of cricket. Andy Roberts was ably assisted by one Jamaican, lean, prolific and athletic Michael Holding. Just to let you know what Michael Holding was and the way he was used to bowl, my young students especially should look out for a match, and especially one over of 1981, when first time the captain Clive Lloyd gave bowling to Michael Holding to open, because so far it was Andy Roberts who would open the bowling, but it was first time Michael Holding was given the ball in the third test match against England at Bridgetown, Barbados. And it's a bare fact, when students and all my friends will see this particular over of 1981 of Michael Holding to Jeff Boycott, one of the greatest opening batsmen of England, you will realize that why this is regarded as the greatest over ever bowled in the history of cricket, because all these 6 deliveries are known to be the pitch perfect bowling. Michael Holding, his book Whisper in Death is a kind of Bible for all fast bowlers. He's known for his commentary and known for his analytical views on cricket. Even the recent one, George Floyd, the death of George Floyd in America, and Michael Holding was the first cricketer to speak about racial disparity. Michael Holding and India goes long way. Though Sunil Gavaskar had criticized Michael Holding, absolutely true it is, because in Jamaica there was Sabina Park, a match where Michael Holding was very aggressive, and that match is called as Blood Bath, Bloody Tuesday. But then today Michael Holding and Sunil Gavaskar are great friends. One more bowler along with Andy Roberts and Michael Holding was Joel Garner, known to be a big bird. He was the person who started, though Yorker was there in the cricket and with the arsenal of bowlers, but it was Joel Garner who made Yorkers extremely effective. All said and done, one bowler I'm going to have a special mention, and that is the great Malcolm Marshall, who came to India tour under the leadership of Alvin Karajan, because most of the players were there in Carripacker. He was unable to make a mark, but when he went back under the tutelage of Michael Holding, Andy Roberts and Joel Garner, Malcolm Marshall went on to become the greatest fast bowlers. I'm not going to speak about his records because records are not the only criteria to look into the player's potential. I'm going to speak about one test match of Malcolm Marshall against England at Headingley 1984. This match is called as one hand magic trick. Why it is called as one hand magic trick, let me explain. When Malcolm Marshall was fielding in a gully, Chris Broad hit a shot and it was in the gully. Malcolm Marshall tried to stop. The ball was hit very hard by Chris Broad. His thumb was broken, and that too not in one place but two places. His thumb was broken. Doctors advised 10 days rest for Malcolm Marshall. But Marshall, with a plastered hand, was sitting in the dressing room when he saw his close friend Larry Bones was at 96. And at the same time, the ninth wicket was down. Bad luck, sheer bad luck, because he was unable to make 100 as there is no batsman. The only batsman available was Malcolm Marshall, who was injured and a fractured hand. But still, for his friend, he came out to bat with a plastered hand and batted single-handedly for his friend so he could make a century. And Larry Bones made a century. On the other hand, Malcolm Marshall also hit a boundary with one hand. That's not all. The match is not over. When West Indies came to bowl, England was doing so well that England could win the match. Malcolm Marshall realized that and had a word with his captain, Clive Lloyd, to give him bowling. Clive Lloyd said, "You can't bowl, your hand is in plaster, and if so, you won't be able to deliver the way you are." But Malcolm Marshall insisted for that. As he went to bowl, the English batsmen complained about the white plaster. Obviously, it was disturbing them. So he placed an elastoplast over his hand and he bowled. I'm not going to speak how he bowled in the match. I'm going to give you the analysis of the bowling. Malcolm Marshall with a plastered hand, obviously the left hand, he was bowling a right-hand bowler. He bowled 26 overs, 9 maidens, 53 runs. I'll repeat, 26 overs, 9 maidens, 53 runs and 7 wickets. Could you imagine? 7 wickets with one hand, and on top of it, he had a follow-through catch. The batsman hit here, the ball straight came to the bowler, it was a catch. With one hand, he got that catch, and this made Malcolm Marshall one of the greatest players. Unfortunately, at a very early age of 41, he died. But Malcolm Marshall is remembered in the history books and the hearts of all cricket-loving people like me and you because of the game he played. To end here, I'm going to speak about one person without whose reference the constellation or the stars or the influential people of West Indies will not be over. The man who is also known for all young generation, called Brian Charles Lara. It was March 30 at Bridgetown, Barbados in 1999 when Australia was touring West Indies. It was this Brian Charles Lara who stunned the entire cricketing world with his knock of 153 not out while chasing the target of 308 against the formidable bowling side of Australia with Shane Warne, Jason Gillespie and Glenn McGrath. This inning of Brian Lara, the second inning of chasing 308, is regarded as the second best in the history of Test cricket according to the Wisden. Let me tell you the backdrop of this series. It was before this series, West Indies went to South Africa, the first series, and they were defeated 5-0, a complete humiliation. And this particular series was also famous because the West Indian players went on a strike because the undignified pay standoff with the West Indian board. So there was a lot of hue and cry in the newspapers, and when West Indies went to South Africa, they were defeated miserably. And when they were back, it was Australia tour. 4 test matches and 7 one-days. The first test match between Australia and West Indies, Australia won with a great margin, again humiliation for West Indies. But the second test match at Sabina Park was a revival of West Indies. Brian Lara, the great Brian Charles Lara, made magnificent 213, one of the best of the innings, to win the match. You won't believe it, at one point of time they were 5 for 2 and 34 for 4, and from then on Brian Lara made that impetus of 213 to win the match. When you think about this third test match at Bridgetown, Barbados, it was Australia who made formidable 490 in the first inning, which still was 199 runs, unfortunate one to miss his double century, and a great partner, Ricky Ponting, making a century of 103, gave 490 score. West Indies in reply made 329, all because of Sherwin Campbell, one of the openers of West Indies who made a century. When Australia came for the second inning, Courtney Walsh, the great Courtney Walsh, ran through with 5 wickets and eventually bowled Australia for 146. On the fourth day, it was 308 runs, and seriously it was a difficult thing because no batsman had ever scored more than 40 in the second inning on this wicket. At the end of the fourth day, West Indies were 85 for 3 and Lara was not out on 2 because he came on 5th down to bat. The last day when the game resumed, Jason Gillespie, who was on fire, got 2 wickets immediately of Edwin Griffin and Carl Hooper. West Indies were 105 for 5. The match was almost in the hands of Australia. It was almost like Australia has done, West Indies is defeated, but Brian Lara had some other plans. He kept his natural game, and Lara with Jimmy Adams went on to give a big partnership. Just when West Indies was thought to be taken over the game as 238 for 5, suddenly there were 3 wickets and now 248 for 8. West Indies were almost again in the line of defeat. Needed 60 runs and last 2 wickets. Sir Curtly Ambrose came to bat and scored 12 runs, but he was there for 1 complete hour. And the partnership between Brian Lara and Curtly Ambrose, Sir Curtly Ambrose, was 54 runs. Obviously, major inning was of Brian. Lara batted for 6 hours, faced 258 balls with 19 magnificent fours and 1 huge 6 to Shane Warne. He made this possible with the last of Courtney Walsh, who was known for more ducks, but they both made it, and Brian Lara was regarded as someone to look for. The last over, a magnificent boundary through the offside to Jason Gillespie, and that was a winning stroke of Lara. The captain Stu Walt said, "I think cricket was the winner when this match was over. It was the best test match I have ever played. It was a great to watch Brian Lara. It was the most extraordinary batting anybody had ever seen before. Lara was under tremendous pressure, but still, he kept on. And now, when he came out to play on the last day, we realized that he is going to make a big one. And he played that 153 great innings. It is because it is known that great players are always love to have big innings and all challenges to show their skills. Though there are so many other influential players of West Indies like Courtney Walsh, Sir Curtly Ambrose, there are so many other players, but I think the third stanza will end up here because I cannot go on more than this. But the last stanza, I'm going to speak about one player who is defined to be the god of cricket. So my fourth and the last stanza of Song of Unduly will be about the devotion to the god of cricket, See you then. Take care.